It's always a pleasure to come to a place like the Reynolds Library. You get to see old friends like Mike Flannery, Scott, you get to meet new people like Professor Garrison and all the other folks out here. And it's also a lot of fun to be something of a trog. I'm sorry. Are we better? Ooh. Yeah, we're better. Okay. I do a lot of presentations, both for the library in general and for the NIH Speakers Bureau. And I've become sort of interested in the sort of historical, bibliographical sociology of making presentations. And I've learned that, for example, that there are 3 rules. First of all, your title must have a colon. Number 2, there must be a PowerPoint. And if you're a librarian like me, you have to have the little trademark there because we worry about these things. And also, there must be an anecdote, 2 or better, and the anecdotes must, on the surface, have nothing to do with the topic at hand, but in the end, you tie them together in a nice little package with a bow. So we will start today with a 1938 Bugatti Roadster. And the story goes something like this. Krista Hamill, who probably knows more about illuminated manuscripts than anyone currently walking around today, tells the story of a fellow bookseller who, at the end of the Second World War, was trying to make a living selling books out of the trunk of his car driving around the north of England. Not a quality job plan. So he bought this old Italian sports car, loaded it up with early books, and drove around. And somewhere around Yorkshire or Northumberland or someplace really sort of desperate, he blew the head gasket. You can't find Bugatti head gaskets in northern England in the late 40s, early 50s. But he did have in the trunk of his car some sheets of 14th century vellum, which were blank, we hope. And he cut a head gasket out of the vellum, put it in place, and the car ran apparently quite well. So well that for years later, people would turn to him and say, "That's a great car, how old is it?" And he said, "Parts of it go back to the 14th century." Now that is a real book moment. You could not have done that with a digital book. 2 anecdotes, I promised. This one comes from my own personal history. When I was at Columbia going to library school, and for those of you who know something of the history of the Columbia University School of Library Service, originally the School of Library Economy when Melville Dewey first founded it, I was the next to last class to get out of Columbia before they shut it down. That was the famous Take No Incompletes class. I did an internship at the New York Public Library in their Rare Books and Special Collections unit. And one day, a young man, and I mean a very young man, he was about 13, showed up with his mother. He wanted to look at a 16th century canon law book in the library's collections. And since the library did not put 16th century books in front of 13-year-old kids, he brought his mom. And they came up there, and the kids, I remember he had an Oakland Athletics baseball cap, and he turned the cap around so the brim would not hit the book. And he's looking at the book, and New York Public did the whole thing. They put out a cradle of foam rests, and they covered it with velvet and opened the book. And the kid looks down at the book and goes, "What language is that?" We said, "It's Latin," which is, not an unexpected language for a 16th century canon law book. And the kid says, "I can't read this." His mother momentarily vacillated between deciding whether she should kill the kid right then and there, or whether they should try to melt into the terrazzo floor. So they left rather more noisily than people normally leave that reading room. And the librarians, for the rest, they were complaining like, "Oh, they should have picked up on this. There was an interview, an entrance interview before you got to the collection, and there was a very good catalog record, and all the tracings were there. It was all in Latin." So anyone who'd been paying attention might have said to the kid, "By the way, do you read it in Latin?" But I thought about it, because first of all, I was an intern. I wasn't getting paid, so what did I care how I spent my day? I said, perhaps this young man would be inspired to learn Latin, because now he knew that there were such things out there. I'm sure his mother would rather he became a stockbroker or something. But again, this is a real book moment. You know, this is a young man who was interested enough to talk his way into the reading room and have the book put in front of him. And if you couldn't read it, well, there are lots of books in our collections that we can't read, but they're there, and someone will read them.